Hi, and welcome to BalletWise. My name is Michael Wise, and I'm going to be spending some time talking with you about topics and issues that are within the ballet world having to do with students, young professionals, and their futures. Just a reminder, I am not a medical professional. I'm just going to talk to you from the point of view of the people I've been able to help and my own personal experiences. I'd like to welcome you to episode number 1 of BalletWise. Over the years, a lot of people have been asking me, how did I get into ballet? What did I do? Why was I so different? And why was I so successful? Well, today we're just going to get into that because I want you to know a little bit more about me. So my name is Michael Wise, and I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. I basically, after seeing a demonstration of classical ballet at my elementary school, got something under my skin, and I started taking ballet shortly afterwards. It was just something that made sense to me. And some of you as parents or dancers will understand what I mean by that, is that we end up having a connection with this art form that's kind of unexplainable. It allows us to move in ways, express ourselves in ways that most people don't really understand, and it's hard to even explain. But moving on, I continue to improve. I basically would receive scholarships. I'd go off to summer sessions. I ended up going off to North Carolina School of the Arts. I trained with American Ballet Theater. I had the opportunity to go overseas and train. And the one quality that always made me more desirable was not the way I looked. It was not the way I was built. It was the fact that I had an undying love for what I did. Every time I danced, everyone could tell how much I loved and how intense I was about what I was doing. And that is one of those things that, as dancers, we have to find that quality that separates ourselves. Because over the years, I can't say I had the best technique, and I certainly didn't have the best body. But these are all little aspects that we in the future will have an opportunity to talk more about. So moving on. Later on, after I graduated from North Carolina School of the Arts, I auditioned for 10 different ballet companies. And you know what? None of them took me. Not one. Everybody was like, oh yeah, you're great, you're wonderful. Just give us your information, we'll be back in touch with you. And zero. So I got this side opportunity to go and do one more year of training in the Hungarian International Ballet Academy in Budapest, Hungary. So I had nothing better to do. So I traveled to Hungary and I trained 1 year with them, which was absolutely awesome. And then they sent me to the International Ballet Competition in Moscow to compete. Now, competitions is another subject matter that we may want to talk about in the future, but competing is something that's not really designed for everyone. I think you have to have a very strong competitiveness about yourself, a strong sense of wanting to prove yourself that will allow you to enter in and be successful in those areas. Well, at the end of the International Ballet Competition in Moscow, I decided to stay. Now, we're not talking about Russia today. We're talking about the Berlin Wall was still up. It came down shortly afterwards, but we're still talking about communist Russia, the Soviet Union. And me being a 18-year-old idiot decided that if I wanted to be one of the best dancers in the world, I was going to have to train with the best dancers in the world. And I felt like the best dancers came from Russia. So I decided to stay, and I became an illegal alien in the Soviet Union for approximately 6 months. Over that 6 months period of time, I ended up befriending some of the top dancers in the city, some of the most incredible people. And they were the ones that helped me get my visa straightened out. They were the ones that helped me find a good place to train. I ended up in one very small company initially where they had an amazing ballet master by the name of Alexander Prokofiev. I trained with him for 6 months, and then he left the company and I left the company. And then shortly after that, I started taking classes at the Bolshoi Theater, at Moscow Classical, at Stanislavski, and these are the top 3 major ballet companies in Moscow. And then my friends decided that it would be better for me to end up in one particular company called Moscow Classical, which was a company that pretty much focused on doing classical ballet first and foremost. I started taking classes there on a regular basis, and before I knew it, they were offering me a contract. And then, of course, I turned the contract down because I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I wasn't able to show myself the best way possible. So when they offered me the contract, I looked at them and I said, why? Because I didn't believe in myself that I was where I needed to be to work with people at this level. So they gave me the option of training with them for an entire month. And at the end of the month, I told them if they still wanted me in the company, I would take the contract. So I started working with them for an entire month. I did class every day. I viewed rehearsals, things along those lines. And then they offered me a soloist contract. So I went from basically not having any contract to being offered a corps de ballet contract to then a month later being offered a soloist contract. I realize this is unheard of. I agree. But we'll move on. And then I started working with the company. I started dancing on a regular basis. I had opportunities that were presented to me that would not normally be presented to other dancers. We would have choreographers that would come in, and I would usually get first choice to be able to work with some of these choreographers. And they loved the fact that I was an American, that I had a different understanding of movement, creativity, and so I was moving steadily up within the company. Over the years that I was there, it's where I met my lovely wife, who I'm still married to today. A lot of different things happened, but it's also a different understanding because it was a different world of that time period. After about 2.5 years of working consistently, working in a wonderful place, a lot of political and civil unrest started happening in the Soviet Union, and the coup attempt with Gorbachev that I believed occurred in 1991. So shortly after all the political unrest happened, my wife and I, we were newly married. We understood that one day we would want to have children, and we didn't want to basically raise them in a country where we just thought you could get shot for being out on the street. Now, doesn't matter. This is not a political channel. I do not want to get into those types of conversations about today's world. But what I do want everyone to understand is that the choices that we make are going to affect us in the long term. I was very happy in Russia. I was very happy dancing in Russia. I met the love of my life in Russia. Everything that made me who I am today as a dancer came from those experiences. So eventually we came back to the United States, where I had the opportunity to continue to dance with companies around the United States, some good, some really, really bad ones. And it taught me a lot of lessons on how companies are run. It taught me on the do's and the don'ts of things that should happen, and what is a healthy work environment and what is not a healthy work environment. Around 1993, I had a major injury. In the middle of a performance, I came down from a jump and I shattered my right leg. The tibia and fibia pretty much broke clean and almost came out. I was in emergency surgery, getting my leg basically reconstructed approximately 5 hours later. I went through rehabilitation. I worked really, really hard. I did everything that I needed to do, and I was able to get back within 6 months. I was back on stage. Why? Because I'm just absolutely crazy. But I still continued to have problems with that right leg. It didn't want to support all my weight, and the type of dancer I was very dynamic. So when you're doing large jumps and the leg doesn't want to support you when you land, it can cause some issues. Shortly after that, that particular company ended up dissolving due to financial problems, which is a known issue in companies all around the United States. And because of my right leg not being what it needed to be, I needed to take some time to work on the leg, to work on myself. So we ended up coming back to Charleston, South Carolina, where my parents lived, and I started going through more rehabilitation, more work, and it really did come down to the understanding that I was not in the right place for me to be the kind of dancer I used to be. I'd lost so much. I dealt with depression, suicidal thoughts, not a lot of them, but still, I was in a real dark place because I felt like for me to dance, I would never be able to be the dancer I was meant to be. because I was no longer on the track that I had been. And so I went to culinary school. I ended up getting IT certifications. I ended up working in a world outside of the dance world and was generally miserable the entire time. About 10 years went by, and that's when I had an opportunity to mentor a young dancer. There was a young man that was at the local ballet school that I occasionally had been asked to come in and teach, and he showed up on my radar, and I swear to God, this child looked like Spanky from Little Rascals. His name's Chris Squires. He ended up coming in, and I started working with him directly. And then over the years, he flourished into this amazing young dancer who's still dancing professionally today. He is much more of a contemporary dancer, but it doesn't matter. He was there. He needed someone there at that time to guide him. So as the years have passed, my wife and I have been able to continue to work with other dancers, some professionals that have lost their way, some dancers that are trying to find their way, and some dancers that have no idea what they're doing. And then on top of that, there's a support structure for all those dancers, which are their parents and their loved ones, that sometimes have no clue what their child is doing and why that child is so nuts about it. Now, to give you a little bit more information about myself is, I'm a hyperactive ADHD kid. No, I'm serious. I'm the one that you saw as a kid that was just bouncing off the walls. I'd go into the doctor's office and they tried to figure out why I could climb the wall constantly. I was nuts, but in the right way. Kids that are just a little bit more outgoing than what we consider the norm. Kids that have super creative minds. People that are just have unreal athletic ability, who see the world differently. These are the kids that end up coming into ballet. These are the kids that end up going into the arts. And you as a parent or you as a dancer need to understand that there are pitfalls and things that quite often we don't like to see. And hopefully in the future, as we progress, we're going to be in a position where I can answer your question, and hopefully we'll be able to, on this podcast, be able to explain to you how to avoid some of those pitfalls. If you fall into some of those pitfalls, how do you get out of them? How do you recover from them? How to find the right kind of school? How to find the right kind of teacher? How to find the right mentor? There's so many things that go into this to being successful. And luckily, I've had those opportunities. Every step of the way, there was always that person that showed up in my life that guided me through that. And unfortunately, dancers just don't have that opportunity. Most ballet schools just teach their class and then send them on their way. And that's not how you develop a person. Dancers are people. And the more enriched that person is, the better dancer they will be, because they're able to bring those experiences in. I am a diehard ballet nerd. But the difference is I have other interests. I love cooking. I love race cars. I like sports cars. I like a lot of things. I'm a very passionate person. But we in this industry need to do a better job of taking care of some of these people, because we are very emotional and we are very open. And when we're on stage and when we're performing, we have to be very vulnerable. We have to open ourselves up in ways when we're on stage. We have to do that in a rehearsal. And when you have somebody constantly standing over you and criticizing you, I'm not going to say that there isn't some value in that, but how it's done can affect the psyche of the individual. It can affect the way we see ourselves. And hopefully we'll be able to kind of guide you, help you to understand how to be successful within this industry, be able to find the dreams that you should be having, and work from there. Now, once again, I'm not a medical professional. I can only go from the experiences that I've had with my own students, from people that I've mentored, and my own personal experiences. And I feel like there's a value to all of those things. I'm an ADHD kid. I'm crazy, but in the right way. So I hope that you'll be able to join us, listen to future podcasts, look at the videos, and see how much value we can bring to this world. So if you have a question, leave us a comment. If you enjoy this content, subscribe and give us a thumbs up. But I just want you to understand that we're going to be here from you moving forward, and we hope that you'll be back the next time. Thank you.